seconds starting now, because I knew it. I know you were ready for this and you already have your space set up. Yeah, right, good. Now we have like 15 more seconds left and I am ready for this. And today I'll put myself some music in my ears to get me going. If you have some music, turn it on to your favorite so that we get going. Time's up. Our time's up. So we're going to start with the warm-up, which are burpees. Today we're going to do burpees for warm-up. We're going to do 12 burpees, right? 12 burpees times 3 for our warm-up. Now, if you can't do the burpees by jumping, right? Because this is what we are going to do, right? If you can't do that, you just go down, take your leg back slowly, and come out. All right, perfect. You can do it as fast as you possibly can. But for us, we are going to do 12 burpees times 4, rest time 30 seconds. Are you ready? Of course I know you are. You're not gonna tell me if you're ready. So let's start. 1, 2, 3, move. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Well done. Our rest time starts now. Breathe in, out, in, out. And I hope you got yourself some water, right? Yeah, right. Two more seconds. The next set. Our time's up. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, and move. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, jump, 11, 12. Your rest time starts now. Walk around. Breathe in and out. One more set to go. You're doing well. I can see you are awake now. Our time's up. Are you ready for the next set? I know you won't tell me. You are. One, 2, 3, and move. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Well done. Our rest time starts now. Walk around. I don't know if you're in a good mood, but I am already. Just that warm up. I'll demonstrate our next workout, which will do 12 repetitions. Our time Time's up. Push up, lie down. 1. So, if you didn't see that, I'll show you again. We are going down. Make sure you're flat palm so that you don't hurt your fingers or don't get some on your fingers instead after the workout, instead of the right muscle. So, we are going to go like that. You get here, close grip push up, right? Lie down, take your legs to the front, lift it up, pull, and come back. Then push yourself up and pedal back. Are we together? Now, I am totally aware that there's some people who can't do the normal push-up. When you get to the push-up, please, you can kneel down, do the push-up. Yeah? Release the legs, take it up, that, then pull and come up like that and pedal back. Are we together? Perfect. Now that you have mastered what we are supposed to do, we are going to do 12 times 3. Are you ready? I am. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, and move. One. 2. Sorry, you do the push up. 3. 4. 5. 6. 7. You're doing well. Flat. Then this for the tricep. Then go down. Take it to the front. Lift your leg for the lower back. And that. Squeeze for the upper back. Press back for the tricep. And that. Perfect. That's 9. 3 more to go. That's 10. And 1 more. You're doing well. 12. Perfect. If you did that with me, I'm sure you are sweating it by now. Our rest time starts now. Our rest time starts now. That felt so good. and you're starting your day on a new normal. We are going to set number 2 of 3. And you have done such an amazing job by just waking up today and showing up. Let me wipe down this sweat. When routine fails you, motivation fails you. Ride on discipline, because you know the benefits. Let's go for set number 2. Are you ready? Because I am. 1, 2, 3. One. 2. 3. 4. 5. Keep going. 6. 7. 8. Keep going. 9. 3 more to go. 2 more to go. You're doing well so far. One more to go. Well done, well done. Well done, well done. Your rest time starts now. If you're like me, you're sweating, so wipe it down, because you're about to go for the 3rd set, the last set. Our time's up. Our time's up. Last set. Are you ready? Let's go for the last set of that workout. 12 repetitions. Yes, you can. 1, 2, 3, and move. 1. 2. 3. 4. 5. Keep going. 6. 7. 5 more. 4 more. You're almost there. Let's go, let's go. 3 more. 2 more. 1 last one. Well done, well done. Clap for yourself. If you did those 3 sets, you've done an amazing job. Our rest time starts now. I'm sure you're sweating, you're dripping, dripping, dripping in this morning where we are taking control, right? Perfect. We have 10 more seconds. And our time's up. Our time's up. Let's go. The next workout, we are going to do rows, bend over rows. We're going to use our water bottle. We'll put it across, and while bending and sticking your bum out, you bring and squeeze. All right. So we're going to do 15 times 3. 15 times 3, starting now. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Well done. Well done. That's it, number 1. Our rest time starts now. Our rest time starts now. Our rest time starts now. Walk around, walk around. We have 30 seconds of rest. 30 seconds of rest. Oh my goodness. I'm so glad my top is long because we are sweating everywhere. All right. I don't know about you, but I am feeling good about this workout. So we have 3 more seconds to go. 2 more seconds, 1, and our time's up. Let's go for the next workout. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and of course 15. Well done. Our rest time starts now. Our rest time starts now. We have one more set of that workout. One more set. Walk around. Walk around. You're doing well so far. Walk around. Walk around, walk around. We're doing well so far. We have 10 more seconds of rest time. 10 more seconds. 5 more seconds to go. 5 more seconds. 2, 3, and our time's up. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, and move. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Well done, well done. Our rest time starts now. That was the third set. That was our third set. That was our third set. Our rest time, we have 15 more seconds to go. 15 more seconds to go. 15 more seconds to go. 15 more seconds. 5, 3, 2, and time's up. Our next workout is going to be chair dips. So you will pull our chair here. We're going to do 10 repetitions times 3. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3, and go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Remember, you're using your hands to lift yourself up. And we are on Tizi Nyumbani. Don't forget that, starting this day, taking control of our day. As we get into the day, we have 2 more sets to go. 2 more sets. We're just going to do them back to back. Please don't feel limited by the number of repetitions we put. You can put as many repetitions and maybe 2 more sets, you know. Yes, let's go. Set number 2. Let's go. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I know, I'm doing them back to back. I'm not even putting a rest timer on this one. This one I'm trying to challenge you because the number of repetitions are very, very small, but you can increase them to 15, 20, 25, kill it. Challenge yourself. So we are going to the last set. We are going to the last set of that workout, making sure this part of the arm looks fabulous. Let's go. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, keep going, 10. Well done, well done. If you push through it with me non-stop, you did an amazing job. My name is Evelyn Owala of Eval Health and Fitness. You can check it out on Facebook, Instagram, or on Twitter, right? So you took control of your day today. Looking forward to meeting you in the next episode, and I hope you're looking forward to meeting Peter in the next episode just to kill it. Have a lovely, lovely day. Bye-bye.
The blind man told police officers, afade mimi sijawahi ona bangi maisha yangu yote.
Hizo ma-award zikafanya watu waanze kuimbia award badala waimbe the word.
Mimi mkinichagua mtaona miujiza.
Anajifanya siku hizi.
Kibia mara moja.
Naogopa Mwenyezi Mungu na uji moto peke yake.
Hiyo si bangi.
Here at NMG, we are working very hard to ensure your favorite publications, Daily Nation, Business Daily, Taifa Leo, and the East African are readily available. In a bid to support the efforts to prevent the transmission of COVID-19, NMG has ensured our staff, our distributors, and their staff adhere to set guidelines. At our printing plant, all staff are required to wash their hands before entering the factory and must be wearing a mask. All workers either change their clothes on entering the factory or wear an overcoat. We are keeping doors open to avoid our staff touching door handles repeatedly. With our automated printing, contact with the newspaper is kept to a minimum, and at the packing process, the staff observe social distancing. Vehicles used to transport the newspapers are disinfected daily before the newspapers are loaded, and our delivery staff all wear masks and wash their hands regularly. Our vendors ensure that they sanitize every time they handle money and wear their masks at all times. NMG is proud to be able to safely meet your information needs. Stay safe, stay informed with our favorite NMG publications.
As we take personal responsibility and adhere to all government regulations and guidelines in relation to coronavirus, may we remember that God is faithful. He will not allow us to be pressed, crushed, and perplexed by the epidemic to a point of total destruction. 2 Corinthians chapter 4 verse 9 teaches us that we may be hard pressed on every side, but shall not be crushed. We can be persecuted, but shall not be abandoned. We can be struck down, but shall not be destroyed.
Get your back leg fired up, strong. Now reach, extend your hands way up and go back. Low push-up, hands down, step back.
Yoga is believed to help reduce the risk of non-communicable diseases, including heart disease, diabetes, and respiratory diseases.
It is one exercise that caters for your mind, body, and soul.
Positive vibes to you, light and peace. Namaste.
Send your parcel or document during this period? The Nation Courier Services, with over 15 years of distribution experience, will deliver it for you. We deliver to every corner of Kenya. Due to our strong distribution network, have overnight door-to-door service and same-day intra-city service with the security and safety of the client's shipment guaranteed. Your parcel is our priority. We'll deliver it for you. Contact us for delivery on courierservices@ke.nationmedia.com or call 0719 038 739.
Na wasi sina tena, uilisha kama pema. wasiwasi sina tena. Ulilishaga, o baba umejawa rehema, rehema, umejawa rehema, no, rehema.
To get Rehema by David Wonder, dial star 811 star 927 hash. Skiza na Nation.
NTV hits the road.
Watu wa NTV namkaribisha hapa Tharaka Nithi County Headquarters.
And like time and time again, it will be worth your watch.
Kaunti yetu iko na vitu mingi mzuri.
And when they get down to business,
tunajengewa soko mzuri ya ghorofa 3.
Infrastructure development.
Naweza nikashukuru kwa hii barabara.
Healthcare transformation. Breathtaking tourist attractions.
Kuna mti mrefu East Africa hii kuliko hii. Kwa kimombo inaitwa Kenyensis. Kimeru watu wote wanajua inaitwa mtunguru.
Set your watch, make a date with us as we explore county number 13, the county of Tharaka Nithi.
This is NTV.
Hello, East Africa. Good morning and welcome to Your World. The COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted life as you knew it and created an unprecedented global crisis that's continuing to give leaders around the world a mighty headache. So this Thursday morning, we're asking, how do you lead in times of crisis? My name is Joseph Warungu, and coming up, they say the true test of leadership is how well you function in a crisis. How have our leaders performed during the COVID-19 pandemic? The stage is set for the Tanzania elections. Public rallies are on, and it seems COVID-19 is nowhere to be seen. Police are treating some who break COVID-19 rules better than others. Why is this? Now, art really is beauty. These murals add beauty and serenity to an Indonesian neighborhood. And this morning, we're asking, what kind of leadership do you think we need in a time of crisis? Share your thoughts, your opinions, indeed your questions with us on our hashtag #NewNormal. But before we lead, let's follow the COVID-19 numbers around the world. Starting with the global figures as I speak, 26,177,603 people have confirmed positive for COVID-19. Of these, 18,442,305 have recovered, while sadly we've lost 867,000 people, 347 from around the world. Now coming to the African continent, to South Africa first, and this is the situation there. 630,595 people confirmed positive for COVID-19. 553,456 have recovered, and in South Africa, as at this moment, they have lost 14,389 people. closer home to our own country, Kenya, these are the numbers. 34,493 people confirmed positive, and of these 20,211 have so far recovered. 581 people have sadly died in Kenya as a result of the disease. Across some of our East African neighbors, in Uganda first, this is 3,112 people confirmed positive. 1,528 have so far recovered, and in Uganda they've lost 32 people as at this moment. In other countries, maybe further up north to Somalia, this is the situation there. 3,310 people confirmed positive, 2,481 have recovered, and 98 people so far have died as a result of COVID-19 in Somalia. Moving on to Rwanda, the country has reported 4,218 people who've confirmed positive for COVID-19. 2,071 have recovered, while in Rwanda they've lost 17 people. And finally, in Burundi, the other East African country, 448 people confirmed positive, 357 have recovered, and one person has so far been reported to have died in Uganda in Burundi as a result of COVID-19. So that's the numbers around the world and in our region. Now let's look at some of the stories we have for you this morning. Universities in Senegal are reopening after several months of closure due to the coronavirus epidemic. Students started slowly streaming into Sheikh Anta Diop University of Dakar as the lockdown measures were eased and physical distancing measures put into place. The Senegalese students were among the most innovative students during this pandemic period, creating automatic hand sanitizers and modifying artificial intelligence into medical nurse robots, were elated to be back. Some said the time at home gave them a chance to come up with more innovation, and that will be seen in the near future, and others took the time off to rest and venture into various businesses as a means of survival. John Magufuli launches his re-election campaign in the capital Dodoma ahead of the October 28th vote after the Election Commission validated his candidacy.
Tumefanikiwa kutoka kundi la nchi maskini na kuingia kundi la nchi za uchumi wa kati mapema kuliko tulivyokuwa tumepanga kwenye dira ya taifa ya maendeleo. Huu ni ushahidi tosha kuwa tunastahili kupewa miaka mingine mitano kuongoza. Tupeni ndugu zangu, tuendelee katika miaka mingine mitano. Kama tulivyo hapa leo kwenye uwanja huu, simuoni hata mmoja aliyevaa barakoa. Hii ni kwa sababu Mungu ametenda. Hii ni kwa sababu Mungu anatupenda wa Tanzania. Tulimuomba kwa pamoja madhehebu yote na tukamshukuru kwa pamoja. Kazi ya Mungu haishindwi.
At a Chadema party rally in Arusha, the leader of Tanzania's opposition, Tundu Lissu, promises his supporters to recover good relationships with foreign countries if he wins the presidential elections on October the 28th.
Baada ya tarehe 28 Oktoba, mtakaponichagua wananchi wa Arusha na wa Tanzania, ajenda ya kwanza kubwa zitakuwa nyingi, lakini mojawapo kubwa itakuwa ya kurudisha mahusiano na dunia. Itakuwa ya kurudisha ujirani mwema na majirani zetu. Katika miaka mitano tumeharibu mahusiano yetu na dunia nzima. Leo hii yale manufaa yaliyokuwa yanakuja kutokana na Arusha kuwa Geneva ya Afrika yamepotea, njaa kila mahali.
Talks between Mali's new junta and West African nations have failed to bring about how the country should return to civilian rule after the ousting of Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. In a major step forward, the UN declares Africa free of polio, and the Democratic Republic of Congo announces the end of a 2-year-long measles outbreak.
After the coup, questions over how to govern Mali and who
after a military coup overthrew the government of President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. 37-year-old junta leader Colonel Assimi Goïta was handed presidential powers in a document published in the official government journal. But Mali's neighbours insist on a return to civilian rule, and talks have failed over the way forward. Within hours of taking control on August 18th, the junta promised to enact a political transition and stage elections within a reasonable time, but in their public statements have not spelt out any details. The coup leaders wanted a 3-year transition period, according to a regional mediator. But the Economic Community of West African States has insisted on an interim government to be headed by a civilian or retired military officer to last a maximum of 12 months. The soldiers have released Keïta, who is thought to have returned here to his residence in the capital, Bamako. The deposed leader made it clear that he did not want to return to power. The junta, which call themselves the National Committee for the Salvation of the People, or the CNSP, enjoys the support of the prominent M5 RFP movement, a coalition of groups that had campaigned against the Keïta government. Its leaders met the military at the barracks from where they launched the coup.
From this moment on, the two major actors in the transition for the change expected by the Malian people for the establishment of a new Mali must be recognized. The two key actors are the M5 RFP and the CNSP.
As for residents in Mali's capital Bamako, fewer than 2 weeks after the coup, it's very much business as usual.
For the moment, we haven't seen any great problems, and even in relation to certain acquaintances, each time we manage to talk, nobody's complaining, and I believe that for the moment, the country's good and things are going well.
So welcome to Your World, and our discussion this morning focuses on leadership. We're living in unprecedented times, the times of COVID-19 pandemic. So the question we're asking is, how do you manage when we're in a crisis such as this? What are the skills that leadership needs in order to manage? So the question that we're posing for you this morning, what kind of leadership do you think we need in times of crisis such as this? We have got a number of people joining us this morning, experts in this area to help us in this discussion. Here in the studio, I've got Mr. Jared Oko, OD and Executive Leadership Effectiveness Coach with the Ken Blanchard Companies, California. We're also joined via Zoom by Bessie Kathambi. She's an environmental and governance consultant, and also Gabriel Muthoma, who is a political analyst. And finally, also via Zoom, Javas Bigambo, a governance specialist and human rights defender. So let me start with you, Mr. Oko. Just before we get into the subject this morning, what's your new normal in the pandemic? How has life changed for you?
I think life has given me the opportunity to innovate the way I do things. The life has given me the opportunity to connect with my family, and also to understand that my children are totally different. They're very unique, they're very different, and they're very complex. And there are lots of things that I need to do to adjust to what we are in terms of the new normal. A lot of things are very virtual, and that is exactly what it is. In terms of defining what then leadership is the way to adjust to the new normal. I think that's now the big challenge that everybody else is facing, that I believe this program will try to expound.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Bessie Kathambi, what about you? What's your new normal?
Morning, Joseph. My new normal is first wearing masks all the time, sanitizing. It's a different world altogether. There's social distancing. Every time you have to be keen. If you were so used to having a hug, you remember it's social distancing and you keep off. So it's a little bit hard to adjust to the community kind of lifestyle that we had before, to this social distancing, keep your distance every time, washing your hands and having a mask is not easy for me.
Okay, thank you. And Gabriel, good morning. Welcome to the show. And for you, what has changed in your life?
Well, I think thank you. By the way, thank you so much for having us. You know, this is actually a brilliant conversation, and you know, the new normal, like Betsy and a good friend has said. Now, first of all, is how things have changed. The things that we used to take for granted, that me and you can call you know, each other up, and we can go into the restaurant and have a coffee. You know, that's one thing that now you really need to even kind of select the areas that you're going to even sit down and have a meal or have a coffee. The other thing, obviously, we cannot do the things the way we used to do and say, you know what, let's catch a movie, or let's do what we need to do. By 9 o'clock you have to be in the house and what have you. So you know, kids are not going to school, everybody is virtual. So really, I think the entire demography of how we lived has actually changed. I don't believe I've seen an area that is not affected.
Okay, thank you so much. And finally, Javas as well, same question to you. What's your new normal?
Well, what I've learned through this period of this global pandemic is that whatever we've always thought to be normal can be turned upside down, and that a crisis such as this can invite us to conversations with ourselves, conversation with the nation, but also to try and see how we can hitch ourselves on the wagon of history and see where is it that we stand, or we could stand when we are tested to our limits. It has taught us that some things, yes, cannot be taken for granted, but it has further given us a few more important lessons. That whatever we initially thought that is indispensable actually is dispensable, and that we can always change our polar positions depending on circumstances that we face or those that are presented to us. And that in the end, it has affirmed one very important quip that I learned when I was growing up earlier, that the only thing that is permanent in life is indeed change.
Okay, thank you very much. And talking about things which are indispensable in this season, Javas, I'm reminded of Bishop Jakes, who was saying that suddenly people have realized God doesn't need all this stuff that we bring into church. Even Zoom, he'll be able to hear them by Zoom. So now, let's start from the beginning, Jared. Yeah. We talk a lot about good leadership. What is good leadership?
I think it starts from the definition of what leadership is. And leadership is all about the ability to visualize, then mobilize people to follow that vision. And that's why you'll find that in political world, somebody has to have a follower. So he has an idea, then he mobilizes people to follow that vision. And it said that leadership, you cannot have leadership without followership. So leadership is basically the ability to visualize what you are sold to, then sell it to other people to follow you. So that, in a nutshell, is what leadership is all about. Okay. But it's also said, Peter Drucker also puts it nicely, that if you think you're leading and nobody else is following, you're only taking but a walk.
Right, you're on your own. Gabriel, what are your thoughts on what leadership is or should be?
Well, I think generally, if you're talking a leader in the normal circumstances, so many people have actually defined what leaders within specific roles are. But in a time of crisis, number one, I know many leaders will first of all come and project, will come out to project calm, which is actually a very good thing. But also, in times of crisis, they say that is when you know a leader. A leader, rarely will you define a leader when everything is moving smoothly. But at such a time when, GDPs are going to be affected, the way of our normalcy has been affected. Children are not going to school. We need to build our capacity in healthcare. I mean, we have just seen that many countries in the world, in fact, nobody thought about the COVID virus. We all started at the same point. You have those that have actually gone ahead through using their own leadership prowess, and you just have people who are still cropping in the dark. So I think, depending on where you're standing, the element of leadership, some have realized it through great protocols. Some have realized it by building capacity. What do we need at this time of crisis? Where do we need to push our resources? And more than that, how do we manage those resources? Those are some of the epitomes of leadership leadership that I have actually been able to see and witness. You have countries today that are dealing better with the COVID pandemic than others. So as we move along, you will see leaders who are going to rise out of this pandemic by how they manage, by how they attack this global pandemic. And you are going to see others who think it's business as usual, who are actually going to run their countries and areas that they represent amok because they are not able to inject certain protocols that are needed in leadership during crisis.
Okay, thank you for that. And to you, Javas, what would you say constitutes the qualities of good leadership or a good leader even?
Well, I would appreciate leadership in the sense that it constitutes a sense of purpose, dignity, timing, wisdom, and connectedness with people or the environment or situations around a person, male or female. And that acute sense of awareness that a person will have while presiding over a matter, and a sense of proper judgment in the best interests of the people and the environment, and seeing how that will have a bearing onto the future prospects of those who will live or come after him or her, indeed, to me, demonstrates the sense of leadership of a person. When we look or when we cast our senses upon the world, we would realize that crisis or crisis situations have always brought out the best or the worst amongst those who've occupied various positions of leadership. It is the Cuban Missile Crisis that defined somebody and the leadership of J.F. Kennedy during his time. Were it not that he had
So, your line is breaking up. We'll come back to you in a moment. Sorry, we're having just trouble with your Zoom connection, but we come back to you in a moment. Let me come to you, Bessie, and I'm going to make the question a bit harder for you.
And judgment. The Cuban...
Javas, let me come back to you when we can establish a stable line. Bessie, the question to you is political leadership. What is good political leadership?
Well, what I think about political leadership, first, when we look at the underlying theme, the first proponent to that is being pragmatic, the issue of inclusivity, and having gender inclusion in all the things that we are doing. So if we have to be, as my friend there said, that leadership is about followers. If you have just male followers, then there's a problem, whether political or otherwise. We need to have a gender balance when it comes to political leadership. And especially during crisis, if you look at what's happened in New Zealand, we have a leader who is a female, who has done, I mean, she has made the globe now change their perception about having women in leadership. So when we talk about political leadership, one, pragmatism, we need to see that we are not book theorists. We want to go by the book. When we're in a crisis, the book concept does not work. Theories don't work. So we need someone who is able to see this is it. As what Javas has said, posterity, what is the future? Our main problem in Africa and also in Kenya is the issue of succession. We don't know who will take over. So we still want to go round in circles and still not understand that if I have a succession plan, whether there's a crisis or not, then there's someone to take over. There's a future. But now a crisis has opened up what we call a Pandora's box when it comes to political leadership. And everybody wants to see, where is my future? What is my future? Instead of actually handling what is a crisis today. Okay. So political leadership is very key, Joseph.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bessie. Now, to you, Jared. In terms of crisis, what does it take to manage either an organization or even a country in a situation or in terms of crisis?
Crisis means danger, but it also means the opportunity to do something differently. And that's why every time we find ourselves in an ordinary situation, we need to adjust to do things extraordinarily. in a different way we haven't done it before. It's also said that danger creates thinking out of the box. And in life, we'll always be faced with a series of God-ordained opportunities, brilliantly disguised as problems and challenges. And now that's what brings out the best out of a leader. And I linked leadership to the leadership of a mother at home. Moms are very interesting. No wonder the Bible puts them closest to God. So in a crisis situation, it means you need to think in a different way. And let's take, for example, a leader of an organization in Kenya finds themselves in this crisis moment. When there's a crisis, you need to act. You can't wait, because the moment between success and failure could just be like that snap moment for an accident. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I should have done that. So the first thing that I believe a leader should do, the first thing is to align his team to focus on the crisis and say, what is it that we're going to do? Bring your leaders together and say, discuss around it. That leader needs to wear many caps. And that's why when you start an organization, you wear the cap of an HR, finance, CEO. So now you wear different caps, but now on different people. So you bring all those people together and say, what is it that we're going to do? Number two is to identify what is it that you want to prioritize in terms of maximizing the people you have. And that's why management now comes into place. How do you manage? And management is defined as the ability to convert human energy or human effort into measurable performance. So when you sit with your strategists and you say, these are the milestones in terms of what we need to achieve in terms of business plan objectives, then you must now craft the roles of your team members to meet all those objectives. So it requires a lot of things that you need to do to get your organization now to the next level.
Okay. Yeah. So if I can come to you, Gabriel, now coming closer home in terms of where we're at as a country with the pandemic, from what we've seen, what would you say about how we have managed or how our leaders have performed in managing this crisis of the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, let me begin by saying, what I told you earlier on, that all of us started at the same starting line. No leader in the world, knew how to deal with the COVID pandemic. It just appeared. You see countries probably where we've expected them to at least be ahead, countries like the US, some countries in the EU, even China, herself, they had their own issues to grapple with at the same time when we were all going through this pandemic. So I think from the baseline, I think all of us started, and we can forgive most of our leaders because half of them did not know, where to go, where they usually go, probably when they seek these answers. Because let's give credit where it's due. We have not built our own capacity when it comes to healthcare. So we've always looked outside for the better part of it. And I think the first thing that opened up to our crisis was because, first of all, we didn't even have things like some of the machineries that were needed, whether you're talking about ventilators, whether you're talking about PPEs. We actually struggled to even bring them in. Countries that have already built capacity in manufacturing were actually ahead of the pack. Even though we started at the same starting line, some countries were actually ahead of the pack because they have the manufacturing capability. But one thing that also came to the fore is, when we now entered into the sphere of how do we go about the virus? How do we go about treating it? What do we know? What kind of knowledge must we apply? Then actually things started changing. Kenya has actually done quite quite well if we are to also be honest with ourselves in keeping to the regulations of the Healthcare Act in dealing with the COVID virus. It has not been easy, but we have actually tried. I just saw the other day WHO has actually started talking about our numbers going down, even though we are testing like yesterday we tested about 3,000, but you see our numbers have come down. So what has led to these numbers coming down? It is because of how we have continued to treat this situation with the seriousness that it deserves. And I hope and I trust we can move in this direction to actually be able to flatten the curve. Having said that, there are tasks which have come to the fore where you're talking about how a leader must be defined. And every time I talk about leadership, mainly third world country or a country that is developing, I am reminded of the revolution, the great countries that emerged during the turn of the century. When you're talking about people like the Lee Kuan Yew, this is an amazing case study of how leadership has followed through and through. And Lee Kuan went to even talk about succession, something that we are dealing with today. And this is when he actually uttered those amazing words that you cannot have success as a leader without a successor. And you do it at and even the timing when you come to select that successor and who that person is. I know our democracy has actually introduced us to another sphere altogether. It is not what it used to be back then. But it all goes on to say, how do you bring about quality leadership, authentic leadership, if you will?
So let me hold that thought for a moment as we'll come into what needs to be done. But throw that question as well to Javas. What's your assessment of how our leadership has performed in managing this the pandemic?
Well, I think in the fullness of time, we'll need to express our gratitude to this pandemic because it has exposed various elements that initially had been ignored. First, the sense of responsibility on the part of every citizen, the sense of responsibility on the part of leaders, because let us appreciate it. He is in a position of leadership. It is an expression of trust on the part of citizens, especially political leadership. And in this country, this sad country of ours, especially appreciating some of the happenings that have come to the fore. For example, how our procurement issues have been mishandled, the lack of appreciation of the rule of law, the lack of respect for simple guidelines on the part of citizens for the sake of their own lives. It demonstrates that on the whole, we don't really bring ourselves to respect we can depend on to hold our country and steer it into that great future, to hold our own lives and safety, even our own health, to protect families, etc. Because I look at it in the prism of what Frantz Fanon called...
Sorry, Javas. We seem to be having trouble again with your connection on Zoom. We will come back to you. But our viewers have been speaking to us on our hashtag #NewNormal. Let's look at some of the comments that you are sending regarding this discussion. What needs to be done to manage in a crisis such as this? And here's a comment from Bernard Odhiambo. An honest leadership is what we need. Leadership that puts the rights of the citizens first. The leadership with no favor for the haves while neglecting the have-nots. Leadership with no corruption like the one we have witnessed during this pandemic. Thank you so much, Bernard, for that. Some thoughts from Nakswini. A sober leadership. Okay, I wonder what you mean by sober, but yeah. At least Danielle, a commanding and controlling leadership, and I can see my panel are taking notes to see whether they can follow up with this. A commanding and controlling leadership will carry the day. A leadership whose authority is heard and presence felt. I'm not talking about dictatorial ones, no. Leaders who can command and still manage the new normal. Thank you for that. Rick J, you're saying, well, Magufuli style, not to follow the West blindly. Okay, so that's your brand of leadership. Nelson Irongo, you're saying, well, a genuine leadership in words matched by actions, one that fulfills development and progressive agenda, one that truly is committed to fight corruption. Thank you, Irongo. Another comment here from Sami Njeri. You're saying, our soldier rules to be reviewed so that in times of crisis, pandemic, disaster, they take control of everything, including donation of funds. Locusts will be gone with one bomb. Corona would have been taken by an army Land Rover in airports to scare it away. Okay, so you want a very, tough reaction to that. Tomonderi, you say strong, decisive, affirmative, independent leadership. One who's focused means what he says, a leader of action, not empty words, not threats. A leader who's ready to go it alone for the sake of his people, if that decision is for the benefit of the majority. Okay, thank you so much for those thoughts. And there's more here. Ken Mushiri, you say, leaders who respect the law with no doublespeak. Yeah, thank you for your comments. Now, let me come to you, Jared.
Yes.
That's what is coming from our viewers. Your reaction to that?
Very interesting. I think the first question we need to ask ourselves when there's a leadership crisis is it a circle of concern or a circle of influence? We need to ask ourselves that as leaders. And what is it that the people view leadership as? People will always describe leadership as, a big car, a big house, living an opulent life. They put leadership at that level, but they fail to realize that some of the models of good leadership is that person who mobilizes somebody to build a culvert, somebody who gets everybody else to make the environment clean, somebody who ensures that there's food for the unfortunate, goes, raises food, and then goes and gives it to them. So it's critical to realize that we need to deal with the leadership vacuum if we want to get all this going. And what is one of the worst vacuums we have? Now, when the people look at their leaders, they're thinking about the biggest challenge that the government has, which is service delivery between elections. So what do? They promise more than they can deliver. Or they promise and say what they can deliver, which ideally they can deliver, but they choose not to deliver. So when you talk about the pandemic that we're facing right now, there should have been a plan for it. Shut it out. And what should have been done? The first thing should have been identify. It's in Nairobi. It was very easy to lock the entire city, put it under lockdown, and deal with it. The way we do elections, we have got returning officers. We can replace them with the health officers and use the electoral boundaries and still get to the houses and test everybody else and use the schools that are now closed.
We're able to reach people during elections. We're able to make sure ballot papers can reach every corner of this country. We should have applied that infrastructure.
Absolutely. Apply it and then use the nurses to reach every house and find out who is affected. Quarantine all of them. And then go on what we call health education. It said that prevention is better than cure. So we must take a preventive approach. Now, for us to deal with that, then we need to deal with the leadership vacuum. What is it? There are 8 things. The first one is lack of role models. We have very few role models. How do we multiply the models so that people who aspire getting into leadership get to us to know exactly what leadership is all about? The next one is the culture of political reward. We want performance, but we have got square pegs in round holes. They wouldn't perform. So I'm in leadership. I'll surround myself with the cronies around me who will know absolutely nothing about what it is. So getting everybody else to do things based on merit becomes a critical thing for the leadership as a government. So to deal with that, it requires a lot more things, and there are many more things that are lined up in terms of the leadership vacuum.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, Gabriel, again, for you, your thoughts and reactions. Kenyans are very clear on the kind of leadership they feel is needed in this kind of crisis. Your thoughts?
Actually, that's a very important question. The question, again, I would spin it around is, do really Kenyans realize what kind of leadership they want? Do they know? Because let's face it, we don't outsource our leaders. We actually get them from amongst ourselves. Are we able to select good leadership? Because that's what comes to the fore, right? The people we give and we bestow responsibility, are we able to select them? This is actually a very finite selection process during a time when we come to vote. What are the key criteria that we use as Kenyans to select these leaders? Remember, not everybody is called to be a leader. Not everybody is a leader. You have so many people who are calling themselves leaders, but they cannot find leadership with a flashlight and in clear daylight. But we bestow them, or we put them into positions where they actually do not fit. And the virtue of that, we continue getting frustrated. Tell you what, this is an example I always give people. We fail in leadership while we succeed on almost every other facet apart from leadership. All right? And in any sphere, if you go to a doctor today, guess what you will want? You will want to get the best doctor. And in fact, you will go the extra mile to find out, where did this man go to school? How many surgeries, if it's that kind of medicinal advantage you're looking for, where did he go? How many of these surgeries has he conducted? If you are looking for somebody to build your house, you want to go for experience. Where did he build the house? How was he able to build it? Did he finish it? Did he complete it? What is the background? We go an extra step when we are looking at other workmanships, and it comes to leadership. Now, Gabriel, we come to our own leadership of our nation, places where we need to get good core quality leadership, we fail because the root or the skills of adjusting that leader is a little bit skewed. Now, we go more into Gabriel, the politics than choosing a perfect leader.
Let me interrupt you for a moment to look at this irony of people are very clear on what they want their leader to do. They know what they know what challenges they want addressed. They know what skills and what qualities they're looking for, and yet we choose who we choose.
Exactly. That is my point. That is my point. On any other sphere, we get right. But when it comes to elective leaders, when we come to realizing who must I give this job, we fail. Why? Because we go back to a tribal bag. Let me get somebody just because they speak my language, they look at me, we are similar in one way or the other. And this is where we fail the test of acquiring good leadership. If we were to look the Lee Kuan Yew way, because this is somebody who changed Singapore in 3 decades. Look at Africa. We've had leaders who have stayed in power for so many years, but they never even did an iota of changing the lifestyle of the people that they led. And this is why I'm saying we get it almost right in any other sphere, but when it comes to leadership, we fail. And why is this? Because we look for variables that don't matter when it comes to leadership.
Okay, thank you so much. Bessie, let me bring you into the conversation now. I think your line is now stable enough. We're looking at, I suppose, crisis leadership in terms of where we are at the moment. And we've had some really good comments from Kenyans. They're very clear on what kind of leadership is required. The challenge is how to transition that into reality of having those people in place. What are your thoughts in terms of how we put our leadership in place?
I think, Joseph, to be very real, to be honest with ourselves, when we talk about this crisis that we are in, the leadership that we have today, we are not yet there. As Gabriel is saying, we go back to our tribal cocoons when we have asked for accountability. When we look at the government today, when we want to beat around the bush, when instead of saying we've entertained corruption, we've enshrined corruption, we are still at it. We run away from what it is. We want to hide ourselves in terms of this didn't happen. We are looking for people, commissions to look into it, but that is not it. A crisis requires someone who is a change management person with an aspect of a change component, where crisis brings opportunity. Yes, there's good opportunity with this pandemic, but what have we done? We've squandered opportunity upon opportunity. And I'll give it an example. The healthcare workers, right now with this pandemic, we should be saying that our level 3, level 2, and level 5 hospitals have been equipped. We are now saying that we have brought the country, because the crisis has brought all of us to a standstill. We went to zero. As Gabriel said, we started from somewhere. All of us started somewhere. But instead of us building now on this, where we have been brought to the ground zero, we are still going deeper instead of going upper. Instead of our hospitals having the equipment, we'd rather have people produce air, and still nothing is being done. Accountability. We need accountability. And the comments that Kenyans are saying, we need people who are in leadership who can be accountable. If I give you 10 shillings, account for that 10 shillings. If I give you 5 gloves, tell me where the 5 gloves went. Instead, what we want now to play tribal machinations, tribal people coming up, politics come in when we are asking for accountability, transparency, integrity.
Okay.
And that is what is killing the current crisis today. We need leaders who are accountable and who can be held accountable. It's not a dictatorship.
Thank you, Bessie. Now that you mentioned hospitals, some county hospitals are in a sorry state, and as the politics on the division of revenue rages, it appears things will get worse. Health workers have now threatened to go on strike starting the 10th of September, with some in Nairobi going without pay for over 2 months. Charity Mwangi now reports that a preamble to the industrial action is already playing out in some counties.
The work of a medic has been described as a labor of passion and love. But here at Maragua Hospital, workers say there's more labor than passion and love.
Sasa kazi yetu ni kukopa marons. Unakopa 8,000 ikikuja hauifanyii mahesabu juu hauna.
And so they appear to be doing the bare minimum. And with that, the environment around the institution is unpleasant, to say the least. The workers were left out of government allocation of allowances to medics, despite their active participation in the fight against COVID-19. This too further fuels their discontent.
Tukaulizana aje, hii corona, pesa ya corona walilipa huku jana, walirukaruka, walifurahia. Sisi hatukupata hata dururu.
Caught in between all this is a desperate community which has to make do with the below average service.
Nilikuja huku kama saa 1 hivi, na tangu nikuje sijaona daktari, sijui ni nini naendelea huku.
Sasa ni saa 7 inaelekea. Hakuna mtu ametuuliza swali isipokuwa namba tulipewa.
County Executive Committee member Kanyigitao is putting on a brave face, promising to right past wrongs and improve on morale.
Fanyikazi kama wale wa kuosha ama support staff, hata wao wamewekewa pesa yao yenye wanatakiwa kulipwa. Na sisi tumesema hiyo pesa ikifika tutawalipa wote wenye wamehusika na hiyo COVID. Tutalipa kulingana na vile serikali kuu imesema.
Similar trouble is anticipated in Kiambu. The governor claims crucial services were being paralyzed by non-remittance of funds by Treasury.
I would want to encourage Senate, ili sasa ikifika next week, Tuesday, wawe na solution ili tupate pesa tuweze kulipa mishahara.
Well, the response and ultimate changes better come before 10th September, as unionists are threatening to down their tools.
We are not going to negotiate. We already passed that. After conciliation, the law says the union can go on a protected strike, and that's where we are going to.
It may not be a great time for health workers to go on strike, with the country being at war with the coronavirus. But their survival trumps patriotism any day. Charity Mwangi, NTV.
Now, Jared, what that story to me is saying is that there's a human cost, a big human cost to ineffective or selfish leadership, especially in times such as this.
You know, it's a very sad affair that you elect leaders to be in position to provide services to you, and for them to provide services to you, you pay taxes to allow them to use the money to give you services. Yet they don't do that. And you're looking at a devolved system from the central government into counties that have got incompetence in leadership. It takes us back to identifying who that person is. If we did what we call a performance requirement option, it'll tell you exactly what is required to be done. If I go, for example, to this county where there is Obado, you define the role of one county government governor. That is replicated all across. So to define the role of a governor, you'd require to just do one and you replicate it all around. What is the title of the job? What is the purpose of the job? What are the key performance areas? So when we talk about the key performance area, then you'll be finding providing good health. Now, devolution works amazingly. The people in the leadership are not as passionate enough to make it work. They stifle it. And that's why the leadership vacuum of lack of passion, unless we have the passion like that of a mother and a baby. Mothers eat last after babies have eaten, including daddy, who is a big baby in the house. That is the passion you require at a government level. They must realize that I'm supposed to provide services to the people. So in order for us to do that, when you come up with the key performance areas of a governor and say, provide health, just like in the house, the role of a daddy like you and I is to make sure there's safety for the children, there's a place to lay their heads, there's a door to lock, there's food in the fridge, and all those kinds of things. What is it that we want the governors to do? What is it that we want the president to do? We define his role, and then from that, then you now find somebody who can fit that particular role. How do you do that? The many organization development tools that will now tell you, if you take this individual and put it in this job, he'll not do. He'll tell you in advance. Why aren't we using that? Because we want to cut corners. We want to favor our people. We want to have our cronies around who are going to sing and dance to our music so that we have more money to ourselves. Yet the people are suffering. Can you imagine mommy and daddy, doing things, then the kids don't have food in the house? What are kids going to do? They're going to break the windows and do all sorts of things. But now, the people will get to the streets if you don't do the right things you're put there to do. So I would swap all the governors, get Obado to Northeastern, and swap all of them. Because with that, they don't have any moment, because people will tell them, you can't do it here.
But that assumes they've got all the skill set to transfer to. Yeah,
at the same way, as it is now, disruptive leadership will be very important. If you swapped all the governors, you'll have disoriented them, and the focus will be on nothing but to deliver the service that will make them look good.
Okay. Now, let me come to you, Javas. I think, I hope your line now is quite okay. We're talking about leadership in crisis, but let me flip it and say, do we have a leadership crisis in Kenya at the moment, would you say?
Well, I wouldn't say that we have a leadership crisis, but we have a crisis in the kind of leadership that we have. Because
what's the difference?
because it is individuals who initially thought themselves to be leaders that now are demonstrating that actually they their natural default settings are, actually where the crisis is, and actually not the leadership as estimated or provided for by the provisions of the Constitution or the law. And I put it in this sense, that we have got this African adage that the right time to repair the roof is when the sun is shining. But we have got the kind of leaders who want to seriously repair the roof when it's seriously raining. Why is it that when we are in the eye of a storm that the COVID-19 crisis is, this health global crisis, that's when leaders are rushing to see how we can have our health systems in place? Yes, I know that we do not have a perfect situation that institutions or the framework of our health sector is working. But really, look at it this way. Institutions that have been charged with putting in place mechanisms under this devolution to work have not been working. Put in context, for example, there is the summit that is chaired by the president and then all the governors sitting there. Why is it that for all these years, 8 years since the advent of devolution, they never thought about equipping every county, for example, with ICU beds to make sure that they're not necessarily self-sufficient, but that they are in numbers that would take care of any kind of crisis. Why is it that we have got leaders in office, for example, president, all the governors, who know very well that when you look at this fourth schedule of the Constitution, when you analyze the devolved functions, that health is a fully devolved function, but 85%, almost 90% of the health budget remains at the national level and not going to the counties, yet it is a fully devolved function. Why is it, for example, that in the agricultural sector, which is a fully devolved function, almost 80% or more still is retained at the national level with the national government? So we have got leaders who still have got hangovers about the excesses of power and not realizing that leadership is about service to the people and not overlordship. And that is the challenge that we are facing right now. Now look at how, for example, the September 9/11 bombing of the Twin Towers in the US positioned George W. Bush in that moment of leadership. See how, as I cited earlier, the Cuban Missile Crisis positioned J.F. Kennedy in his leadership with Nikita Khrushchev, at that time the leader of the Soviet Union. So leadership tests leaders, rather crisis tests leaders. And when a leader is surrounded by a few individuals that are not critically aware of what leadership entails, a sense of service, a sense of servant leadership, a sense of consideration about the other, not the self, then we find ourselves where Kenya is today.
Okay.
One, when we have got finances to take care of a situation, they think about pocketing that instead of serving the people. Today, I would want to ask this question. Do the ministers that we have in office today, the president and all the governors, care so much about how many families today have slept hungry in the slums and the hamlets and the villages in this country, that today, how many young families and mothers who are maybe expectant and faced with the challenge of this coronavirus are not aware about how they'll face tomorrow, and whether these leaders are putting in place mechanisms to take care of this, not tomorrow, but right now.
Okay. Let me hold you there, Javas. Thank you so much for that thought. We're going to take a short break now. We'll come back to the discussion. But just before we do that, let's have a look at more of your feedback on our hashtag #NewNormal. This is Philip Otieno. You say, we need leaders who will understand the crisis and make wise decisions concerning the crisis. Thank you for that. This is Dennis Tepper. You say, servant leadership is what we need. Okay, asante. Herbert Adungo, you say radical and decisive leadership is what Kenya needs at this moment. Thank you. Bernard Okello, dictatorship point. Okay, we should expound on that, what you mean by that. Babalaki, I guess the name leader in Kenya has another meaning. All right. Wow. Leo wa Kenya, James Giduku, good leadership entails the resolve to bring solutions, putting in place right approaches, giving timely directives, fair and transparent, and that which is ready to make sacrifices for the common good. Okay, thank you for that. We'll be right back with more on leadership in your world.
Just last month was Mental Health Awareness Month, so we're continuing the conversation.
This person just turned me into their toy and every evening, and it was, yeah, when I approached my mother about it, she slapped me.
What mental health needs is more sunlight, more candor, and more unashamed conversations, and that is what Unscripted is about.
You know, when people say, oh, he committed suicide, yeah, that person who drives those big cars committed suicide. Mental health has got nothing to do with your economic status.
Do you need to send your parcel or document during this period? The Nation Courier Services, with over 15 years of distribution experience, will deliver it for you. We deliver to every corner of Kenya. Due to our strong distribution network, have overnight door-to-door service and same-day intra-city service with the security and safety of the client's shipment guaranteed. Your parcel is our priority. We'll deliver it for you. Contact us for delivery on courierservices@ke.nationmedia.com or call 0719 038 739.
Director, you also need to put a lot of consideration when it comes to preventing the spread of the coronavirus, especially here in the all right. Yes, and I think that's what I learned. When you do get a sneeze or you feel like coughing, take a tissue paper, put it on your mouth and in front of your nose and sneeze into it, then roll it down and throw it in your trash can.
Welcome back to Your World, and this morning we are looking at how to manage in times of crisis such as the one that we have now, and we still continue to receive and welcome more of your comments in terms of what kind of leadership do we need in a crisis such as one we have in Kenya and elsewhere with the pandemic. And with me is a panel of people who know a thing or two about this issue. Here in the studio I've got Jared Ouko, who's OD and Executive Leadership Effectiveness Coach with the Ken Blanchard Companies, California. We also have via Zoom Bessie Kadhambi. She's an environmental and governance consultant. We have also Gabriel Mutuma, who's a political analyst, who's joining us also via Zoom, and Javas Bigambo, governance specialist and human rights defender. Just before we get into this discussion, now the issue of double standards in enforcement of COVID-19 regulations has cropped up again. Western Kenya Governors and Devolution CS Eugene Wamalwa hosted tens of teachers at the Masinde Muliro University of Science and Technology in Kakamega, while another set of politicians led by Kakamega Senator Cleophas Malala were hosted by ODM Secretary General Edwin Sifuna in Bungoma County. Now those two meetings went on uninterrupted. However, a separate team believed to be allied to Deputy President William Ruto was dispersed by police. Zacchaeus Mosame with the details.
Helter-skelter was perhaps not the agenda for the meeting, but the leaders who are seen to lean towards the Tanga Tanga faction of the ruling Jubilee Party got just that. The Deputy President allied team were meeting at Hamisi in Vihiga County, but it was over as soon as it started. The police dispersed them. And they tried to stand their ground with the former Kakamega Senator Dr. Boni Halwale employing rudimentary means. They are not a happy lot.
The only way they will bring order is if they stop the Uhuru Raila associated meetings, then we will accept for them to stop ours.
In Kakamega County, however, the meeting attended by Western Region governors and a section of elected leaders championing for constitutional change through the BBI went on smoothly. These leaders said the Deputy President allied politicians had it coming because they did not follow the COVID-19 related guidelines to the latter.
Ati sisi sasa tunaharibu mambo ya Waluya. Sasa Waluya hapa tunaharibu nini? Jameni, nyinyi mko hapa mmeketi. Nini tumeharibu hapa?
Ukiwa na wanaume wawili wanataka msichana moja, na wewe unataka kuambia wanaume wakuije pamoja, wakae chini, waamue nani anachukua msichana. Hiyo inawezekana kweli?
Wewe kama umeshindwa kufanya kazi, sema umeshindwa kufanya kazi.
This was happening as the youthful faction also met in Bungoma at the ODM Secretary General's home in Kandui constituency, drumming up support for the Building Bridges initiative. All said and done, there can be no politically correct way to apply the COVID-19 regulations. The correct way is to apply the rules across the board to protect all against this common enemy. Zakis Masame, NTV.
Okay, Bessie, let's pick your thoughts on this story, which happened a while back. I don't know that we call this selective leadership or selective justice. Your thoughts?
Well, it's not selective leadership. It's just doublespeak, because the same rule should apply. It doesn't mean that because we have our differences, and that's what our leaders need to understand. We can have different views, but it doesn't mean we need to be acrimonious in how we treat each other on different worldviews or perspectives. So when it comes to the rule of law, I would expect the kind of gusto they have when it is the opposition or the person they don't like, that kind of energy also meted when it comes to transparency, accountability. The rule of law is not selective. It does not work for me and doesn't work for you, Joseph. It should work for everybody. Everybody should be able to say that they are governed by these rules and they are attending and upholding these rules. So when you look at how the two functions were handled, is wrong. And we are in the 21st century. If we are still going to have the issue of Luya, Kamba, I mean, when will we quit that kind of ethnicity? We need to be above board in terms of tribe. I don't care your tribe. We need to see that the rule of law is applied across every tribe. It's not for one person, no. And it's not that there are others who are champions. Everybody is under the rule of law. The Constitution did not say that there's a tribe that is higher than the other. So that for me, that is not just selective, it's double speak, and that is what we're continuing to see.
Okay, thanks for that, Bessie. Now, Gabriel, your thoughts on that in terms of leadership in overseeing the administration of justice?
You know, we are actually, or we actually are following the tight restrictions that have actually been given to us, every Kenyan, you know, to abide by the act, by the Health Act, you know, on COVID-19. So the issue that one group here will, you know, will be told that they must actually abide by those rules, and another one will, you know, just go ahead and do their business without really looking into those rules, or with the people who are actually mandated to keep this act going, turning a blind eye. It actually will be seen as selective, and indeed it is selective. every person must abide to these laws and rules that have been put out there by the Ministry of Health, bar none. Whether it is politicians or whether it is me and you during our, day-to-day interactions. So I sometimes fail to see when we have an issue where you have doctors who are saying, guess what? Come the 10th, we are going to go on a strike. I mean, we have a lot on our plate at this point. We have an issue with the Senate. There is the issue, even the revenue allocation bill. We still are not there yet. It is actually hindering activities within the counties. So what I'm saying is that we have a lot of things on our plate today than politics. At this point, what I should be concerned about is that the doctors that are almost going or engaging into a civil strike are actually sorted. We do not want to bring this issue of corona back to where it was critically. We have already started, bending the curve. So for us right now to be talking about, these people are doing this meeting in Western, these others are getting, tear gassed when they do the very same thing, or we are talking about doctors here who are going on a strike. I think in the order of importance, it is for us, first of all, to ensure that these people here who have been our first caregivers, our first medical responders are sorted, that they don't go on a strike. But guess what? Look at what we are doing. This is indeed leadership. This is where it counts. We should be at the table of where things matter. This is a decision-making process that must actually be given the limelight.
Okay.
But instead, look at what we are doing.
Thank you, Gabriel. Let me put you on hold for a moment. Now, Jared, let's change tack a little bit and look at what's the experience from private sector, or shall I say organizations, in terms of managing during times of crisis? Because they too, just like governments and governors, have had to respond to an unprecedented situation to rescue businesses. What's your experience of what's been going on in organizations?
I think the organizations have realized that this moment requires thinking out of the box, forgetting the old normal, which was a problem, and now shift into the new normal, and also realize that during a time of leading in crisis, performance under pressure, and also managing workforce that is dwindling requires thinking. So they go back and they realize that they find themselves in this quagmire and they don't know what to do because they've never faced this before. So it requires a leader to think very differently in terms of the approach to how things are going to be done. Because the first thing that comes to your mind as a leader of an organization is, how am I going to keep my customers? Because you lose your customers, you're done. It's not like the government that doesn't care about the citizens. You lose your citizens, you're done. So you depend on your customers to pay to keep your organization running. So what is it that they would need to do? That's what I'd like to look at in terms of what they would need to do. One would be revisit the strategy. Then look at the operationalization of the systems that you have, and then look at the people that you have. With that, it allows you to still deliver the services that now requires innovation. Because if people are walking to your shop, now you need to think of how to get the products to them. And the crisis that I think they're facing is not knowing where the government needs to plug in to make it better. Because the government needs to start thinking about, for example, KEPSA, all those organizations, 500 plus, are the ones that generate jobs for the country. Now they've been hit by COVID. Who has thought about helping them come up? Who is going to help them when they have to cut their staff into half? Or pay salaries in terms of half? What is the government doing to bridge that gap, to make sure that these organizations are still going? Look, for example, we have a lot of infrastructural development in the city now. Now, who is coming to the city? Very few, isn't it? What would have happened if you beefed up the technology infrastructure to allow Javas not to keep on going off? How many people would transact things? How many coaches will do virtual coaching? I do virtual coaching, but sometimes it's just difficult to get across because you depend on an infrastructure that is not working. So what is it that the government needs to do to help these organizations come up? It's like you go into a garden and you find that your flowers are not watered. What is going to happen to them? They're going to wither. For you to rescue them, you've got to water them and apply more fertilizer to keep them alive again. Now, that's what is happening to KEPSA organizations. They're withering and they're struggling. Has the government thought and said, how many jobs have we lost since COVID-19? Do they even know how many in terms of numbers? And how many more numbers do they need to have on to break even and start generating more jobs? What is it that they need to do? It all goes back to dealing with that thing called the leadership vacuum. And I like what Javas talked about, organizations that are going out of their way, even during this pandemic, to still do CSR activities to make sure that people that the government should have been thinking about are taken care of.
Okay. Now, Bessie, let's look at some aspects of leadership itself and see how we can help those in power. Now, self-examination is a tool that's available to leaders when you put things on hold a moment and reflect on how you're performing. Do we self-examine as leaders in this country?
Well, I don't think so. Or if we do that self-examination, we want to favor ourselves for the positive and run away from what needs to be changed. Also, to just add on a little thing that Jared has said, in terms of the corporate governance currently is a little bit wanting. I say a little bit wanting because they are the people who can model for our governments what it takes to be and to be able to have. We are in a dispensation where people's skills will be very important. So self-examination by government should, one, focus on the people. What are the citizens saying? If our self-examination of the government is saying we can't trust you, when we come to the numbers, we don't know whether they're cooked numbers, whether they're actual numbers. There's a gray area when it comes to how they are doing their service delivery to us as the citizens. So self-examination by the government would be a pointer to tell them, here, we need to go back to the drawing board. This is what we need to do. For sure, like Java said, what did it take it 8 years for them to sit to know that we need ICU beds? I mean, it should have been that across the many years that we have been in the evolution, that now we have said our healthcare was 0 and now we are at 10. At least we can appreciate. But self-examination is critical, but it is not skewed. Once we have skewed examinations, we want to heap ourselves praise when we actually should be telling ourselves, you need to pull up your socks, you need to wake up. In terms of also self-examination, the infrastructures that we have, today we are all grappling the cost of data. We have gone virtual, but the cost of this going virtual, I mean, the common Bananchi may not be able to go virtual. So what are we doing to make sure that the infrastructure will mitigate that difference? So self-examination will tell you that now we need to see, is it reduce the taxes that are taxed on these data bundles, or what exactly needs to be done? But those self-examination will not happen because what we look at when we are asked for self-examination, it is our political inclinations. Who will support us? Where are our people? What will our people see? Watu wangu wako wapi? Instead of looking and saying, as a county, we have failed because we have left the slum people or the informal settlements, get their hardest hitters. So what are we going to do about it? Okay. So that self-examination is critical, Joseph.
Thank you so much, Bessie. Now, Jeffers, let me come back to you. And before we take Jared's drastic measures of transferring governors left, right, center, Can we help them from where they are? Maybe self-examination, maybe, I don't know, some emotional maturity. What do we need to do to equip them to handle things from where they are?
Well, first I would say that leadership is not about embracing hypothetical musings or perhaps going on an overdrive of gathering policies and putting in place legislation, and then in the end, all those pieces of legislation and policies gather on the shelves like a museum of policies, etc. I think we need to have our leaders get to know what it means to appreciate the law that we have and the values. Two, to appreciate policies and execute them. And then to know that when trust has been bestowed upon them, then that place, that platform of leadership is supposed to make sense to the people. Now, really, I think there is no particular kind of proper training that would place people into positions of leadership. Even if one was to go into all great universities of this earth, unless their character puts them to a place where their conscience works for them, they do not vacate the necessity of conscience, then even education is not very useful in terms of that kind of leadership. Because as my good father always tells me, education is not about the certification. It's about how you expose the values that you've earned for the benefit of the others. And so I think our leaders need to know that for us to exemplify leadership, it is to reflect, for example, and I want to look at it through the eyes of Thomas Sankara, who said that women hold the other half of the world, and so they have got a place to occupy in the place of leadership, as even Bessie said, that every person must be included. Now look at the example that you played out on the matter of other leaders conducting public meetings and others being forbidden. And yet Article 27 of the Constitution speaks about or gives guidelines about equality and non-discrimination, whether on the basis of conscience, beliefs, etc. Gabriel Muduma, my good relative, and I'm his grave digger, said quite clearly that it is important for leaders and even the led to appreciate that in the times we are living, which are very critical, if guidelines have been given for the purposes of our own safety and preservation, then whether you occupy a position of power or not, those values should make sense to you. It makes no sense for leaders of ODM or some Jubilee leaders to gather in their numbers for whatever political purposes or reasons, and then forbid those who are opponents, their ideological leanings or interests, from gathering as well. All these leaders must not gather for those reasons that they become even a threat, not just to themselves, but to the society itself on the grounds of health.
Okay.
And so gathered as we said this morning in these deliberations, it is important for these leaders to know as much as ourselves, because as we are seated here, we know that the mandate of this country would perhaps someday fall on our laps. So we must not just be chastising those who occupy positions of power today, but also us exemplify these things. Our leaders must start embracing common sense and common values.
Thank you so much. Indeed, we're going to bring leadership now much closer home, away from the corridors of power. But first, people wade through a flooded residential area after heavy monsoon rains triggered floods, cutting off the electricity supply for the past 6 days in the Pakistani port city of Karachi. Protesters likening it to a scene from the Titanic movie called for the local authorities to step in, drain the area and restore electricity. Nawab Qureshi, a shopkeeper, says, "We're extremely disturbed. There's been no electricity for 6 days. The regular customers are not able to come, nor do the vehicles come here. Many of them broke down. People can't get down from the upper stories of the building." Lubna Salman, a protester, says, "In our home, the water gushed into the level of 11 feet, meaning that it touched our ceilings. We were scared. It was like a scene from the Titanic movie. It should not be like this. For God's sake, it's not the will of Allah. The country can only progress with effective planning." That's the situation in Pakistan. Now we'll take a short break. We'll be right back with more on leadership in your world.
Heaviness and a burning inside, it could be heartburn.
Indigestion and heartburn? Eno gets to work in 6 seconds and works on the 6 symptoms of heartburn so you can keep living life non-stop. Eno, fight heartburn and indigestion fast.
Na wasi sina tena, oilisha kama pema. Wasi sina tena, oilisha kama. O baba umejawa rehema, rehema. Umejawa rehema, no rehema.
To get Rehema by David Wonder, dial star 811 star 927 hash. Skiza, non-nation.
NTV hits the road.
Watu wa NTV namkaribisha hapa Tharaka Nithi County Headquarters.
And like time and time again, it will be worth your watch.
Kaunti yetu iko na vitu mingi mzuri.
And when they get down to business,
tunajengewa soko mzuri ya ghorofa 3.
Infrastructure development.
Naweza nikashukuru kwa hii barabara.
Healthcare transformation. Breathtaking tourist attractions.
Kuna mti mrefu East Africa hii kuliko hii. Kwa kimombo inaitwa Kenyensis. Kimeru watu wote wanajua inaitwa mtunguru.
Set your watch, make a date with us as we explore county number 13, the county of Tharaka Nithi.
What is she doing here?
She's coming with us.
If she's going, I won't.
We won't gain anything with the two of us fighting.
He's already here for me. Why are you going out with Carito? I saw you with her in town.
Saw us where? Ramon told me you were going with a boss.
Don't try to change the subject. Do you think it's right for you to go out with that woman?
I just ended a very complicated relationship. That poor excuse of a man has been making my life a living, breathing nightmare.
That's what I'm saying, Lashana. I don't want to see my nanny sad anymore.
I think the time has come to give myself another chance to be happy.
Along came love, in association with Blue Band Peanut Butter.
Welcome back to Your World, and this morning we're looking at what we need to do as leaders to manage or lead in times of crisis such as the pandemic that is before us. With me is a panel of guests who have got some thoughts on this area. Jared Ouko, who's OD, the Executive Leadership Effectiveness Coach with the Ken Blanchard Companies California. We're also joined via Zoom by Bessie Kadhambi. She's an environmental and governance consultant. Gabriel Odomo is a political analyst, and Javas Bigambo, who is a governance specialist as well as a human rights defender. So just before we get back into the discussion, we'll put your world on hold for a moment and see what else is going on in the other world. Dozens of skiers and snowboarders rushed to the slopes after ski resorts opened in Chile just at the end of the winter season, where snow has fallen in abundance. Unlike last season, though, resorts have put in place strict health safety measures due to the coronavirus pandemic. Alvaro Llanes, Chilean Olympic snowboarder, says it was super necessary for the team that ski centers open because that's what we do. We have to train. We were at a standstill for many months. It's very good indeed that they opened it. Matilda Schwenk, a Chilean Olympic skier, says, "It was really anticipated. This has been the longest time I haven't skied in my life. The conditions are great. There is a lot of snow," she says. So that's where that's Chile for you. And in other places, a 300-meter-long 3D artwork adds beauty and serenity to a neighborhood in Jakarta. The artists from the independent Komunistas Perupa Jakarta were keen to liven the mood during the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. The group has around 60 painters, most of whom are freelancers. They have painted murals in the past to highlight certain environmental and political topics. This is their first large-scale 3D painting. It's lively now. Many people come, kids playing. You know, before this area was quiet, only cars passing, says one resident. Some 16 artists painted the streets during a 3-day event organized by the Basuki Abdullah Museum, which is also located in the street. The event was also held as part of celebrations for Indonesia's Independence Day, which was on the 17th of August. Steel Orchestra Metronomes performs an online concert on social media on the eve of what would normally have been the Notting Hill Carnival, one of the world's biggest street festivals, which was cancelled for the first time in 54 years because of the coronavirus pandemic. The carnival will be entirely online this year, with concerts pre-recorded in concert halls in London.
It's very strange. You know, normally this place would be heaving with people, full of activity, you know, bursting with life. But now it's just a few of us coming around, just trying to get together and keep our spirits up. We've learned a lot from this, you know, and there's a lot of things we could keep, that we will keep, you know. I mean, especially with the online program we're doing, you know, it's more exposure for the band, more exposure for Carnival on a whole. And I think what's happened now, because we know there's been nothing actually on the streets and it's gone virtual, there's a lot of things we could take from that, a lot of positive things.
It's really sad because this is it's a huge thing what we do every year. And not only is it just us doing music and competing, panorama and performing on the roads on the Sunday and Monday, but it's also getting to see your friends and family that you don't see throughout the year. So it's also like, it's just a big hole that everyone's really missing. We've got to look at the positives. So we're doing this virtual Notting Hill Carnival, and it's giving like a lot of people the opportunity to visit these amazing places and perform at these amazing places like the Royal Albert Hall and Abbey Road Studios and big theatres in the West End. So we take positives from that, but it's really difficult. I think this has actually made everyone more hungry to get back to doing it. So everyone, even though people who haven't played for ages, they want to come next year and play. They want to come down and see us even if they're not playing. They want to be involved because it feels like something's been taken away from us. So as soon as we get it back in our hands, we're like, everyone's involved.
Have a nice weekend. From myself, David, Eversley, Colin and Dean. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Okay, now monkeys, camels and penguins are put on scales at ZSL London Zoo as zookeepers register the weight and height of all the animals, an annual exercise that helps them monitor their health and well-being.
So today we're doing our annual weigh-in at ZSL London Zoo. So it's the one point in the year where we weigh all our animals and we update that information into our record database. It's our zoological information management system, and that's a global database which helps us look after animals here and also help contribute to their worldwide conservation. Weighing our animals is really important. It helps us look after our animals and look after their well-being while we care for them here at the zoo. So not only by keeping a regular weight do we know if they're growing as they should be growing, as would be normal from a juvenile into an adult, It can also help us if we need to look after them and give them the right medication, to make sure we give the right medication at the right dose. Penguins are very easy to weigh because they're all like fish, and it's very easy to ask a penguin to stand on the scale for a piece of fish, whereas our squirrel monkeys, being monkeys, they're very mischievous, and even though they have a great relationship, they do like to have a bit of fun and do their own thing sometimes.
It's about leading and managing animals. Now, Mexican tattoo artist Omi de Boer is giving away free tattoos to those who've bitten the novel coronavirus, etching a COVID-19 survivor logo on people whose lives have been marked by the disease. An unforgettable reminder for some to better take care of themselves and those around them. Oscar Morales, a COVID-19 survivor, says, "Yes, it means so much to me, and to think that I survived the disease and that unfortunately many do not. I thank God and all my family is well." Another survivor says, "I didn't take very good care of myself in the beginning of the pandemic. I used to go out. No, I didn't take care of myself in a special way. I was very careless, and after I tested positive, now it's complete care. Face masks all the time, disinfecting my hands." An outdoor dance show by performers from London's Royal Ballet is cancelled mid-show as police enforce current restrictions on gatherings due to the coronavirus pandemic. Weeks after a huge blast killed more than 180 people, injured thousands, and disfigured huge streets of the city, Beirut residents must now begin the process of healing both physically and psychologically. For many, like 58-year-old Jumana, this begins with fixing their scars left by flying shards of glass with the help of a plastic surgeon who's been offering his services for free. Several people in Lebanon, including plastic surgeons, have offered their services for free to help people affected by the Beirut port blast. Jumana Abu Dagam was in her home in Beirut's neighborhood of Ashrafi when the blast happened. She says she remembers being completely drenched in blood in the aftermath because of a gushing wound in her head. She had to have around 70 stitches. The Kanj family lives in downtown Beirut. All of the windows in their apartment were shattered in the explosion. Now, the coronavirus pandemic has caught an entire generation of recently graduated medical students in Mexico by surprise, forcing them to face unexpected challenges and accelerating their learning curve while battling the disease in the country with the third highest number of deaths in the world. Mariana Benitez, who recently graduated as a doctor, said, at first it was all very new, and so there were so many patients that you were surprised. Like you'd ask yourself, what is happening? Never during our studies did they prepare us to see something like this. Otto Tavera, who also recently graduated as a doctor, says, in fact, this was the confirmation of my professional vocation, of a professional path that I was doubting a lot, as we are filled with doubts in the formative path through our studies. And finally here back at home, a day after the Orange Democratic Party and Migori members of County Assembly resolved to impeach Governor Okoth Obado over graft allegations involving his own family, a section of residents of the county have expressed dissatisfaction with the move. They accuse ODM of double-speak on corruption. The counties, as Eunice Omolo now tells us.
37 out of 41 MCAs on Tuesday resolved to remove Governor Okoth Obado, facing a 74 million shillings graft scandal, acting on a directive from the ODM party's National Executive Council. The decision to impeach has angered some Migori residents.
MCAs wako na Governor Okoth Obado sababu wanajua kazi governor anafanya hapa Migori. Nyinyi mliwashwa sababu ya pressure na mkitaka kujua muendelee.
ODM hawezi pata hata kura 10 kwa hiyo impeachment. Obado will win by the end of the day.
A section of the residents now accuse the ODM party of double speak in pushing for accountability for graft in the counties.
Bwana Mbadi, corruption iko tu Migori peke yake. Stop calling our MCAs to Nairobi, unawa frustrate. You want Mbadi.
Nao sheria ifuate mkondo wake. Kama ni kumhukumu Obado, waanze kuhukumu kutoka kwa wale wafike kwake. Hatuna shida. Itakuwa ni sheria imefuata mkondo wake.
Party chairman John Mbadi says the decision to impeach Obado was necessitated by the anti-corruption court verdict that barred the governor from accessing his office.
It may be a painful one, but it is the decision that can be made. That is to have the governor of Migori County impeached.
But there are a number of issues that are wrong with that decision. Sospito Jamong, the governor for Busia, nothing has been done. There is no meeting that has been convened to remove him. We have even Sonko. In as much as Sonko was elected on Jubilee Party, the motion of impeachment must not be moved by the Jubilee MCAs. The party can even summon the ODM MCAs in Nairobi and ask them to move an impeachment motion against Sonko. Nothing has been done of the sort.
Obado was arrested last week alongside 9 other individuals, 4 of them being his children, accused of misappropriating close to 73 million Kenya shillings of public funds. The sitting to debate the oust of the governor at the county assembly was to take place today but did not because some MCAs were away. Eunice Omolo, NTV.
Okay, now moving away from politics, let's come back to discussion on leadership. And I want to bring the topic much closer home with the help of my panel. And I'll start with you, Jared Ouko. Now, we've seen schools struggle, we've seen small businesses struggle. They too are going through a crisis. There is also crisis in our homes. You know, incidents of domestic violence means that leadership is lacking in a sense. So at that kind of level, what kind of leadership is called for example, if you're running a school where, you know, things are now haywire?
I think that puts really the private schools in a quagmire. One is because they would only be paid when kids go to school. And to take care of your staff would be a big, big challenge. So it's a real crisis. For government, teachers, you know, the government will pay the teachers, and that makes things a little easier. So you'll find that we need to identify that there's a crisis. If you're, for example, running a school or running your own private business, you identify there's a crisis, then you look at what we call, how do I now perform under that pressure that I have? Now, how do I really look at my strengths in terms of my organization? Now, how do I innovate the best way to get things going? So you'll find that private schools linked to the people who are having their children at home who go to these private schools, they need a tight relationship with their customers. They need to be very innovative to ensure that there are virtual classes that happen and parents still pay for it, because if that is not done, then meeting your bills is going to be a big, big issue. So that requires you to rethink about your strategy, rethink about your operations, and then think about your people. So who do I let go? Can I get into an agreement and go into half a salary because they need a job after? Or can I lay them off and get into some agreement that when things get better, I will do this. But now that takes us back home. If you are working and here you are, you don't have a job, and you go back home, you need to pay rent, you need to do all sorts of things, you have a mortgage, it becomes a difficult issue to deal with. So what is it that we need to do? We rethink on how to readjust our agreement with the service providers. And I like the point where the government asked the banks to rethink about the loans. You see, that now needs to cascade all the way down. The government does not just needs to think about that, but needs to think of what is it that is happening now at home. Because mental disturbances are all across the board based on this. And you're always home as a daddy or as a mommy. What is it that you're going to do in terms of readjusting to make sure that things work in a normal way? So rethinking about your expenditure, because money keeps on flying and you cannot, there's none that is coming in. It requires harmony at home for you to contain that and agree, let the children know, let your workers know that this is the situation.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Jared, for that. Java, let me come to you now again with the same question. We spent a lot of time talking about leadership that is wanting, but these leaders come from among us. So at our level, what do we need to do in terms of upping up our leadership skills? So, sorry, you're on mute. If Javas, you can unmute.
I'm saying, thank you, that we need to depart from this long-held tradition of entombment of ideas and common sense the moment we ascend into positions of responsibility. Because it is easy to wonder here in Kenya, why and how is it that individuals appear full of common sense, virtues, and foresight when they are gunning for those positions. But the moment they are sent to those positions, they turn into something else not ever imagined by those who trusted them with those responsibilities. And then there are also these other times where individuals, of course, purchase or procure their way into those positions, bereft of common sense and wisdom. And then we imagine that upon ascending into those positions, wisdom will descend upon them like the Holy Spirit. Those are ways that we need to depart from this fallacious approach to imagination that the moment one is entrusted with positions, then there will be great individuals. The other thing is this, that we need to have an organic approach to respect of values and continuity of societies. For example, why is it that I have had various leaders speak to us that we are facing moments of change, or we are a moment of change right now, whether constitutional, devolution, legislative, whatever. But the little that we have right now, we are not taking care of it. Now, look at it this way, that whether it is in matters of this COVID crisis, and actually is a reality that we are facing, a crisis in this 2020 moment that has got eternal consequences, we still have got leaders who do not have full appreciation of the dire dynamics of it. And the desire to play politics at the expense of wisdom is another thing that also sends us into the gutters of logic. And we also need to have leaders who are capable of listening and learning, because leadership and learning are indispensable of each other. Trouble is that, and the biggest tragedy, that in this country of ours, individuals who have the responsibility of holding political offices imagine that they cannot, most of the time, be advised, that they have got nothing to learn, that they cannot be guided. I think, in my own understanding, that a leader is like a rocket heading into space, must be properly guided, whether by books of scripture, by statute, and by the slate of advisors that surround them. Okay. So I think even as we think about amending the position that we have in the Constitution, that we must make it mandatory that leaders, whether it's an MCA, whether it is a governor, it's a senator, it's president, that actually they need to have 2 or 3 critical celebrated advisors around them. Because I think the biggest crisis we have is that we have got rockets in the name of leaders who are not ready and willing to be guided.
Okay.
And that's why they lose it when they get into space.
Thank you, Javas. Now, Gabriel, to you, and I'll change the question slightly. some people say that sometimes in order to effect change, the system must be allowed to collapse completely so that you can put a new one in place. Do you buy into that?
No. In times like this, and I can understand that, people have actually said that before. In a times like this, you build on better. And let me repeat again. In a time like this, you build on better. There are people who can actually change.
I'll up my volume a little bit so I can hear you, but keep going.
Yeah, there are people who can actually bring about change. Remember what I told you. In a place where there's a leadership vacuum, it does not mean that the foundation is wrong. No, it means that we have not just found the right person for the job. The right person is there. The foundation may be right. We have not just identified the right person. For instance, you're talking about the schools, right? Now, in these two areas, the public school and the private schools, most private schools are continuing learning, all right? Our public schools honestly have come to a complete stop. There is no learning happening. So you expect these two groups at one point to come back together and continue with the syllabus. Tell you what, those that are in private schools who continued learning will be way much better than the kids in our public schools. So what does that remind us as leaders coming into now the sphere of continuity when we are opened up or when we are able to flatten the curve? It will mean that immediately we start building on the foundation of ensuring that, guess what, COVID happens once, it can happen again, even if not the same strand. Another a virus or another pandemic may hit us. Are we going to find ourselves in the same place that we were before? So we must build our capacity in our public schools. And this is where I had actually started thinking that, guess what, our laptops, the initiative that the president came up with at the time when they were taking up leadership in 2013, had we only built capacity for that, guess what? Probably all our children in public schools and the infrastructure thereof would have actually supported the current environment. But guess what? We never continued. That program, died a very slow and painful death. The digital learning program has been forgotten, right? But this was a very noble idea. Had we known then what we know now, guess what? We'd have actually burned the midnight oil to ensure that every child in our public institutions had a gadget that would connect him to the digital learning process. But it is still not lost, because guess what? We are able. We can do it. All right.
Okay.
This. Let me finish out very quickly. These gadgets are actually manufactured locally. And you see, when we talk about employment, there is actually a number, 1.7 million people have lost jobs. Okay. What does that tell us?
Gabriel, I'm going to cut you short only because we're running out of time. We're in our last 3 minutes. And I just want to give each of the panelists a minute or so to give us your thoughts. We're going to have to get used to living with this virus. So what lessons, leadership lessons, do we draw from the pandemic to usher us into life post-COVID? And I'll start with you, Bessie, briefly.
Right. With this pandemic, one of the things that we need to know, or a lesson that we should draw from this, is that embracing innovation will take us, will be able to make us manage our crisis better. Innovation, not just in terms of technology, but innovation in how we handle our issues, how we handle the whole crisis. Because with crisis comes opportunities, and with opportunities comes all these facets of making sure that innovation is uptaken. And I think that will be our selling point this time, leaders to embrace innovation. Yes.
Okay. Gabriel, your in a few seconds, your closing thought.
Oh, guess what? I'll actually agree with, to a large extent, with what Betsy has said. Innovation, I think, will carry the day. Everything has actually gone virtual. Look at how we are meeting today. This was unheard of, but guess what? Today we are able to converse. We are able to actually, give ideas and what have you virtually. So I think, to a large extent, things will change. It will actually be the new norm. Schools, actually, from what we are hearing, schools may actually are going to build a lot of capacity, not only local schools, but even international schools. They are actually going to build a lot of capacity in technology, where students may not actually be required to even fly overseas, but actually handle all their studies. The next thing I think we are going to see is the frontier in medicine. Things are actually really going to change. It will not be business as usual. So even the way we do work, production, and what have you, things are really going to change.
Okay, positive note there. And to you, Javas, your final thought in just a few seconds.
I would say that we owe it to this crisis to think differently. That a moment is now at hand for us to do so much of introspection, reflection, and soul searching, that leaders need to appreciate the responsibility now on their shoulders to guide a nation into the proper direction, and that if we do not respect the laws and the values of our land, we are indeed savages. And factually speaking, that we have a moment to realize that technology, common sense, and hard work in changing dynamics are going to preserve not only us, but this country and this generation.
Okay.
It is our time to do it.
Thank you. And final word to you, Jared Ouko.
Yeah, when you have a customer service crisis, you don't expand the customer service department, but you deal with the issues that create the crisis. And I think for us, we need to think and ask ourselves, if this was to recur again, what plans do we have in place? Post-COVID, what are we going to do with all these thousands and thousands of beds? What would happen if we resorted to preventive health care that keeps people away from the hospital and use that money for infrastructural development and get more things going?
Okay, thank you so much, Jared. And that's all we have time for in our discussion on leadership today. But before we go, here is some of your thoughts on our hashtag #NewNormal. This is what you've been saying regarding what kind of leadership we need in this crisis. Africa will mature. The time we stop thinking of succession and start thinking of ideas of development and sane leadership. Thank you, Alan. We have another one here from Boki Sami. You say, right now in Kenya, we the people have to accept the reality, whatever we can get out of this corrupt system, either given under duress, sideshow, or pressure. Okay, Asante Sami. Then this is from Alex Were. A tribal bag syndrome shall ruin us. Indeed, it shall. And well, thank you. That's all we have time for. Yeah, well, there's one more here from Mike M. Not working because it is based on faulty fundamentals, and thus any new normal based on the same fundamentals will surely fail. Just thinking. And this is from Jimmy Ngaruya. Well, then no one would want a leader in our country and Africa at large if we want them to account for funds. Wow, okay, that's a harsh indictment. Maurice Monday, you say, how do you expect our leaders to be accountable when they are splashing millions during campaigns as if they get this money from trees? First, we make laws prohibiting giving money to electorates. This will solve some of our problems. It is also voter bribery. Thank you for your comments. Keep them coming in. Now, tomorrow, we put on our fighting robes and turn our attention to the art of self-defense. Yes, security has always been an issue, and we need to stay safe. So tune in, learn a few self-defense moves and tips, and have fun while you're at it. So on behalf of my NTV team here, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and my panel this morning, Jared Ouko, Bessie Kadambi, Gabriel Muduma, as well as Javas Bigambo. Have a good day, keep safe, and see you tomorrow, God willing, 6:30 a.m. first of all for a workout, and then 7 a.m. Your world is on and it's hot.